Welcome, everybody. This is the podcast for Real Window Creative. Real Window Creative is Christopher Boswell's website that talks about the things that he's passionate about, imaging, and other creative outlets like writing and all kinds of things. And so we thought it would be fun today if I would just kind of interview Chris. Normally you hear him making the introductions on his podcast, but since I'm a local voiceover artist and I'm heard on the radio every great once in a while, we're going to flip the switch here just a little bit. Good afternoon, Chris.
What's up, Lyle?
Hey, I'm just enjoying your ultra plush couch
I'm
here
glad I got that, man.
and
Just for
in
you.
the
I read
Real
it.
Window Creative Studios here. We're
I'm hard to.
surrounded by about 200 pounds of equipment, some bicycles, pictures, and a lot of computer monitors. So I'm right at home. But at any rate, it's a great website that you have here. And it begs the question, what is it that actually drives Chris Boswell? My answer to that, if I'm going to answer ahead of time, is going to be creativity. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I it's it's probably taken me longer than it should have to get to the point what I'm working on today. I used to draw when I was a kid. I always had a Big Chief tablet. Remember those cheap old brown paper lined? That was all I could get my mom to buy me. So I had to draw on those, and I just had to. Anytime anything come up that was stressful, I would disappear into my bedroom and start drawing.
Hmm.
So creativity's always been an outlet for me. Somewhere along the way, I remember being outside. We lived in Amarillo, Texas. It was on a big high plateau, so it had really weird weather. That's where it's like Tornado Alley type of thing. And I remember seeing a thunderstorm, and it was hailing, and everybody else ran inside, and I'm standing out in the middle of the street, just looking at the beauty and being in awe of nature. And it felt something said connectedness to me at that moment. But of course, I didn't know what all. That's me re-looking at that today, but it's somewhere along the road I decided it was my dad actually gave me a camera for my 13th birthday because I wouldn't stay out of his, and so I haven't drawn much since. I love the immediacy of the camera, and so I've been making pictures all along the way, and it's helped support me. It's helped open doors for me. Other people enjoy it. I've done one-man shows all over the country. There's home shows and you name it, food gatherings, and sold my work. I was keeping track at one point, selling stuff on eBay. I've sent a matted printed version of my work to every state multiple times. I had a map. I've got a picture of it somewhere where I put stick pins in, and we got down to 49. We had all 49 states. The only one left was North Dakota. There's not very many art lovers in North Dakota. I mean, there's not very many people there, all of it. Anyway, I finally got it, and now they go all over the world. But I wrote an article that got published called "The Lightning Hunter" in 2004, and it was really cool. It got published, and that was cool to see myself in a worldwide magazine or whatever. And that I promised myself I was going to do more writing then, but it's taken me up until last year to act on that, really.
Okay, let's back up just a little bit. What was the impetus that got you into being a professional photographer?
Yeah, it started at a Ku Klux Klan rally in Washington, D.C.
That sounds interesting. Sounds like a story.
Yeah, I I was managing restaurants at the time, and I was working at a place called Bennigan's. A lot of people are going to know it. It's a family dining, but then at 10 o'clock there's a flip the switch, and it's a drink. There's a dance floor, several bars in this particular Bennigan's, and it was St. Patrick's Day, and we had standing room only. The fire marshal had actually been in several times throughout the night. All the managers were working 12-hour shifts, and he was counting heads and telling us, okay, you're over occupancy. You need to take out 50 people or take out 10 tables. So we were hauling tables out into the parking lot to make room for this, crazy Irish crowd partying. And I was about to get off, and two guys got into a scuffle, and it just turned into a big brawl melee. One of my doormen came over and tried to break it up, and that made it worse. And we ended up having to push those 6 guys out the front door. And one of them wouldn't stop fighting, and he got a few scratches on him. At one point, it looked like they were going to go through the front window, and Um, anyway, the police came, and it turned out those were police officers off duty, and so we all got arrested. Six of us got arrested for aggravated assault, and they threatened me over there they threatened us all, but I mean, they were like, "You're going to end up in a hole in the ground," right? And of course, I had to drive through there at 2 o'clock in the morning to go home. I didn't feel very comfortable anymore. I knew I needed to do something different. I was tired of being around that atmosphere. And so I took a break and went down I was in Philly, and I went to Washington, D.C. And then overnight, at the hotel or whatever, I saw the rally, an article about the rally or something the next day. And I thought, well, I got to go down there and check this out. It's perfect, right? Because I wanted to see the history. That's why I came. And I realized I didn't have a camera. I didn't have a camera with me at all. And I hadn't even noticed. I'd kind of quit thinking about creativity. And that struck me. So I immediately went over to Montgomery Ward's, and I bought an X700 kit, went down the next day, and it was something else. It was very exciting. I don't know if you've ever been to a rally in Washington, D.C., but I mean, that's where people go if they want to be heard. And they had published the route for the Ku Klux Klan to walk through town all the way through to go to the Capitol steps.
Okay, now, about what year was this?
Oh,
Oh, I know. I'm going to date you somewhat. We'll pretend you were 5 years old.
this is probably around 88, 89,
Okay.
1989.
So are we talking the Klan rally with white sheets and the hats and the whole 9 yards?
The whole 9 yards.
Okay.
Yep. David Duke was probably
So-
there himself.
Full Ku Klux Klan regalia.
Yeah,
Wow.
and right away, see, this is how my brain's always worked. Back in Amarillo, I used to dig through the trash to get advertising art. That was the cheapest way to get a poster. I couldn't get anybody to buy me posters, so I would make my own out of it, right? And so immediately I saw this picture in my head of the Capitol Dome, right, with the Ku Klux Klanman right next to it, right? Just tight in the frame. Saw it in my head. And so that was my goal for that day, was to go get that picture. But I never made it to the Capitol because it was really dangerous. There were police and riot gear. I have a lot of pictures. I'll never forget a picture of this probably about 22-year-old black woman police officer who was at the end of one of the riot lines. They were trying to hold a line. She was petrified, with under the shield. She had a baton, and somebody would make a noise, or they were firecrackers or whatever it was. People would think it was a gunshot, and they would start running and trampling people. And I found, a couple of times I had to duck behind a car and just barely kept from getting knocked over. And I finally thought, it's exciting, but I'm going to, I left. I went home. And the next day I saw that on the Washington Post cover, someone had got the exact, one of their newspaper guys had, photojournalists had gotten that picture. And it all started right there. I was shooting for I went right home and had business cards printed. I thought of the name. I remember my grandma used to tell my mom, you should have him do something with this. He's very artistically, he's talented or whatever, or he wants to do that. And so I bought a scanner. I didn't know how to do it. I went home and looked in the paper, and there's no jobs.
Okay, now, what kind of scanner did you buy? Did you buy a scanner where you can scan things into your computer, or was that an audio scanner so you could keep track of what was going on in the police channels?
One of the things I've always done intuitively is, instead of saying, why can't I ask, how can I?
Good question.
When I ask myself, how can I looked in the paper, nothing there. I'm very impatient, so I needed something now. So yes, I went down to Radio Shack, and I was always into radios. I still am. This audio thing's been, like I said, a long time coming, right? And so I started scanning the local fire and police channels in the basement. We lived in a row house. My girlfriend thought I was nuts. I just set up a folding table down there, and I don't know why down there, not to bother her, I guess. And actually, I could get out the back door really quick, and I had put a kit in my car, in the trunk of my car, my camera kit, and there was a call for an accident, and it just happened to be right around the corner. And so I jumped in the car and went over there, and a boy had been hit by a woman and critically injured, and he was already gone. And I'm standing there with my camera, but I think the boy, just two women there. I'm not even sure who they were. I think one of them was a driver. Anyway, they were both crying. The police were all still there and they were doing their investigation. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder. And I was actually on a week vacation. So there'd only been a couple of days since Washington. And I turned around and it was a woman. She said, "Are you a photographer?" And I hesitated to say yes, but she looked down at the camera in my hand. So, oh yeah, it's kind of doubtfully, right? And she goes, "Good." And she reached right in her purse immediately and pulled out 2 rolls of film and handed them to me. And I intuitively just took them. And she says, "I work for the Northeast Times. Take some pictures. There's a drop box in the side parking lot." And it was after hours, so they were already closed. And she says, "Take both those rolls all the way. Those are 35 rolls. So take 70 pictures." She was like she was my boss, right? And so I did it. And I remember thinking how hard it was because I expected to see blood and guts in the car and somebody laying there with a sheet or something, and I ended up photographing the women embracing and the emotion. And I went there and I put them in the thing, and I didn't think anything was going to come of it. And 2 days later, probably, the phone rang one day, and it was the editor of the Northeast Times, John Scanlon. And he said he liked my eye and he wanted to know if I wanted to come to work for him. And so it was strange because it seemed like the universe was just guiding me. It was really wild. And so it's that also, I've worked in photography in some form from that day forward. So we're talking 30 years.
All right. So journalistic photography was really your first foray.
Yeah. And they told me they'd pay me $25 a picture. Right. And so I said, well, I have a job. And he goes, "That's okay. You give me your schedule. I'll give you a couple assignments a week. See how you do during your time off." And so he had me going like 2-3 assignments a week. I was making 70, back then I was making $300 extra a month. That was pretty attractive, right? Like today's money, $1,000, I don't know. So I thought, well, I can buy equipment with this, more gear. And so I started this little bookkeeping thing and I started keeping track. And then I started getting better. I realized I could, one time they printed a layout of 3 pictures. I got $75. Now I'm thinking, ooh. And so that made me think about different angles, different ways to cover each event, whatever it is, sporting event, or, I got to photograph governors and President Ford's daughter. It opened all these doors for me to go rub elbows with people I wouldn't have done before. And that was attracted to me. Plus the restaurant, right? I had actually transferred that over to Philly out of that other, and we distributed the Northeast Times in the lobby of the restaurant. So when I got back to work, the staff had seen the picture and saw my name under it. And I like, "Is that you?" And so there were several people on my staff that was interested in photography. And all of a sudden they were more interested in me. And I thought, this is going to be fun.
All right. So there was a social benefit.
Yeah. And then then there was a fire. The sorbet candy plant started on fire. And I went over there and all the staff photographers were there. They had 3 staffers. I was what they call a stringer. They had 2 stringers and 3 staffers. So we were like the last men to get and they were all there. So I thought, well, I just wasted my time, right? I was over there like 2.5 hours and I figured they'd use all their pictures. And those guys invited me to go have a beer, and we went and had a beer, and they made fun of me. They said my stuff sucked and all this. I'm like, "Really?" "Yeah, we almost stopped using you. You're just really not that good." And I'm like, "Well, that's funny because tomorrow they're going to use my picture on the cover." I mean, you know me, that's what came out, right? And they're all laughed, took a swig off their beers. And the next day, my photo was on the cover of a fireman in his bucket. He was too close to the flames and he was turning around. I don't know if he didn't have control of it in the bucket, somebody else was controlling or whatever, but he was telling him to get him back. And there's a big orange fireball. They had all been on the other side shooting into the sun. I don't even know what they were thinking.
Sounds like a dramatic shot.
And that paid $100.
Hey.
So now the money keeps going up.
We're talking real money now. We're talking in Benjamin.
Well, now I'm thinking,
especially in the 80s,
300 plus a couple covers. Now I'm in my head thinking $600 a month, right? Plus my full. So I was all in at that point.
Yeah.
Plus, I've still got those items framed. If you walk around the house, or you can see them, they're in frames. There's 2 in the kitchen, 2 in the office, and those are great conversation pieces. I love
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
And it's too bad they're deteriorating. They're starting to get brown, but I have them scanned.
There you go. In a different kind of scan.
Different kind of scanner.
So from journalistic photography, then we started doing some more commercial type of art projects, correct?
Well, I
Or
moved in.
were we doing some family
I
photography?
came here. I actually decided right after that I was going to move, go be near my family. My mom was in Kansas City. My dad was in Seattle, and I hadn't seen my dad. I flew out here to visit, and I landed on Seattle. So I came right out here, and I started looking in the paper again. I actually did a Christmas show, but I didn't have. It was a joke, trying to do photography. I didn't have enough of anything. It was actually quite humorous. I can't believe I had the guts to do it, but. So I ended up with a job at a portrait studio in South Center Mall, and next thing you know, I'm photographing Gary Payton, Eddie Johnson, Xavier McDaniel, all these guys.
Good Wichita basketball player.
And I found out I had a knack for it, and the sales were increasing there, and actually it turned out to be a problem because they promised me a certain bonus, and I was doing so well that they weren't willing to pay the bonus. So that created a breakdown, and I got let go, and I was on unemployment for 6 months, and I started my own business at that point with that with that 6 months. So I started shooting weddings, and I did, different commercial things, headshots, different things. And then I was also doing landscape all during that time, building I actually took a trip before I started that job and did 3 weeks across the Southwest and just started building my portfolio right now. All those pictures are in that office over there in a file cabinet, negatives, slides. And I've been shooting pictures ever since.
You've got how many thousands of those slides in 3-ring binders, in boxes, in file cabinets? How many thousands do you think?
Well, there's 100,000 pictures on my hard drive right now, digital. And then there's probably another 100,000 over in there. So we're talking 250,000. That might even be more. I'm too impatient to count them.
That's a lot of clicking, brother.
Well, it's been through a lot of cameras too. Trust me, a lot of cameras.
I'm surprised your right index finger can't lift like a house or something with all the work it's gotten.
Well, maybe it can.
You never know. It looks pretty strong to me. That's a lot of stuff, and I'm right now being treated to a view of a lot of your artwork because you've got a slideshow going on in one of the monitors here. Looks to be maybe an iPad across the studio, but just tremendous views.
There's 1,000 pictures there. That's Amazon Photos, and that's just streaming those 1,000 pictures in a stream. There's White Plains, New York. I've photographed every major city, every national park, every state capitol building, and a lot of stuff in between.
And so one of the things that people can find in Real Window Creative is stock pictures.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that will lead people, if they go to your website, realwindowcreative.com, they can find ways to find those stock pictures. Where does your website take them for those different
right
stock
across
pictures?
the top, there's a nav bar, and it's got links to pretty much everything I do. Adobe Stock is one of my partners, so you can go to my portfolio there. It's about 6,000 pictures there. Shutterstock's one of my partners, about 6,000 pictures there. Alamy is another one of my partners. They're all on that line, about 11,000 pictures there. And there's, 15 or 20 other stock agencies. Plus, I just added video. And so I've got about 1,100 videos online. And that's part of it. It's kind of been a 3-tier deal. The stills came along, then I added video, and now it's the writing.
Okay. And all right, you mentioned video. I've noticed that I'm seeing a lot of aerial photography.
Oh yeah,
coming out of you. So what's going on with that?
Well, oh my gosh. So if we go back to remember what I was talking about, increasing the pictures that they were running, right? I realized that if I moved my area, moved my perspective, everything would look differently. So if I learned to kind of photograph everything from 360 degrees on the ground, but then I realized I wanted to get in the sky. So for a long time, I wanted to buy a cherry picker and drive it around right? So I could get in the bucket and get a higher vantage point, right? But I never did, you know. And then so when the drone came out, I was like, yeah, because now I could get in the sky. So
Ah.
now I can get pretty much infinite view of a 180-degree sphere around anything. And that gives me so many more possibilities for how to view something. And I've taken this even into psychology, right? If you don't like the way something looks, just change your spot in the circle, change your perspective of how you view it or where you view it from.
Mm-hmm.
Photography has instructed my self-development along the way. It's pretty amazing. It's the best gift my father ever could have given me, that camera.
All right, so now we're talking lots of images. We're talking video now. We're talking aerial photography now, and one of the things that you and I have collaborated on recently is you've been doing some writing, and I've done some voiceover work for some of your writing that is not only mentioned on Real Window Creative, but is also on Medium.com. Am I
Well,
correct?
we're on Medium now, you and I. We're also on Spotify, Anchor, and I didn't have anything ready for this, but we're on 7 platforms now. iTunes is looking at us. And so I decided I wanted to write in December. A long time ago, but I finally decided to really put an effort on it on Medium, www.medium.com. Christopher Boswell, Real Window Creative. And so I wrote about 250 articles in the last 12 months. And so then all of a sudden, the idea of you reading them came up, and I have 2 other people reading them, Jim and Trish, and it's got whole new life now because reading my own writing, I don't really get a true perspective on it. There's something about, I'm too close to it. But then when you read it back to me, wow, it was just like it gave it more of a legitimacy or something.
Well, it's very much like when somebody is a songwriter. If you write your own music, hearing somebody else perform your tune.
Now, see, I always thought that would be bothersome. I would think, what? I would hate that, right? But now I know I was wrong that whole time, right? I love it. Hearing you talk about me on that train tracks, like, oh my God. I can smell I can hear the water. When you read that, all the senses come back to me of that event.
Yeah, it makes it easy for you to relive that, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the SWATs in the principal's office, right?
Oh, yeah, I could identify with a few of those. Although I was, some people thought I was a perfect child. Yeah, okay. Anyway, what is this hanging behind you, my friend?
Well, one of she says the word tribe's overused. I like the word tribe, but I get it. One of the people, photography for me is really the law of attraction working. I just create what I like, and then you get to decide, or the viewer or whoever can either look at it or not, or they can just walk on by. And I love that because I don't have to be in a dialogue and try to win anybody over or anything. And so actually this came out of Donald Trump posts on Facebook. One of my friends who I've known for a decade or longer called me up and said, hey man, somebody just asked me what's going on with you. Are you okay? And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, where are you coming from on the Trump thing? I'm not sure. I think your message is getting lost because she says, I know you, but it doesn't seem like you, right? And so we got into this dialogue about that. And then something in that attracted her. And the next thing you know, we're working on a class. She's reading some of the stories too. And she has a company called Craft It. She also had Embellish downtown here in Tacoma. She's kind of transitioning out of that into her next phase. Looks like she's going to be moving to Bisbee. But she does culture crafting. And that's at www.craftit.org.
Craftit.org. Okay.
I think. I hope I have that
So
right.
now, is that what this is, culture crafting?
Yes. And so her and I worked together on, and she was exactly right. I can because I want to do everything and I am so excited about so many things, sometimes my message can get lost unless it's a picture, right? And so we worked out my mission and vision statements and my core values, and it's right on. And it helps me to look at this and keep my communication more effective, in what I'm, because in writing, that's obviously now way more important than in taking a picture of a bridge or whatever. You know what I mean?
Okay, it's across the room, and you'll have to forgive me. I don't have my glasses. What does your mission? What does your mission statement say?
Real Window Creative creates content to inspire the world, pushes boundaries and beliefs to maximize the gifts of others while vulnerably connecting to produce shared abundance.
Okay.
So you and I right now hopefully are creating shared abundance, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the listeners and for us, the vision statement is the freedom and beauty of reciprocal abundance. My core values are, and she had me write 50 or 60 things. So we did all these exercises pinpointing down to really get to what's the reality of it. And this kind of came out of the Trump conversation, a lot of it. So my core values are relationships, originality, responsiveness, integrity, and commitment. And that's just right. You probably know as much as anyone if that's true or not, because you and I have worked together in another capacity,
Mm-hmm.
and over a long period of time, right?
I would go along with those are your values. Absolutely.
So, according to her, and she's got she's pointed to me a lot of different schools of thought and mentors on the web and authors and whatnot that support all this. So it's not just her coming up with something out of the seat of her pants, but of those 5 core values, everything I do before I do it. So for instance, this endeavor, you and I doing this podcast, I have to ask myself, is it going to be original? Is responsiveness in there? Is it about relationships? Is it about commitment? Is it about integrity? Those are almost all 5 in there. Probably all 5. So that's a deep yes.
Well, unless we start lying about your resume or something, we've still got integrity. We've got all the rest.
Well, integrity is the key thing for me. Warren Buffett once said, don't do it if you can't publish it in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Right.
Very simple.
And when you start living like that, which I didn't do for a long time, and I still challenged by it, you sleep better at night. Don't have to wake up looking for your car or any of this weird stuff. So
you don't have to go back through and remember what you said to this person or that person.
Right.
So,
right.
Absolutely.
And that's what's going to attract the people that are most aligned with me.
Mm-hmm. So your mission statement, your vision statement, your values, that basically what you're saying is everything has to flow from there. It's got to fit, otherwise it doesn't belong.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm most passionate about. So that's where the most energy is going to come out naturally. Lyle, I find myself, I can hardly sleep. I have so much energy for everything that I want to do. And I get so enlivened by it. And I just kind of sit right here and go, okay, what am I going to do next? And I don't even want to leave the house, right? Because I've got images that I haven't even seen myself.
Okay.
So I can sit here and go into that archive and pull stuff out that I've never even looked at other than when I looked through the viewfinder.
Okay. Well, thank goodness for DoorDash.
Right. Exactly. They complain about the cost, but I'm like, really? Because it adds a lot, $10 to each meal or whatever.
Yeah. Well, at least, technically you don't have to leave the house.
Oh, I love this internet. Yeah. Amazon and DoorDash.
Absolutely. Yeah. And from what I understand, even grocery stores deliver these days. So
that's right. 2 hours.
So my dream of becoming a hermit someday just might be realized. Who knows?
I've been there. I've done that. It doesn't work.
So basically what we have is Real Window Creative is a real window into your creative side.
Well, you could put it like that. However, I'm glad you brought that up. When I came up with that name or concept, what I envisioned was a framed picture on the wall of a place I'd been that I was sharing. So I give someone a real window into Yosemite National Park, right?
Hmm.
That's what that was for. But I knew I was going in other directions, so I left it. I didn't make it photography, right? I wanted it to be real window creative because I knew it was going outside of the realm of photography. So now if you add the writing in there, it still fits into that name. I was worried about this in the beginning because I'm not sure it makes sense to the viewers or the readers, but it's the same thing. So the real window creative for the writing gives you a real window on my view psychologically, or my idea of what works and what doesn't, or my,
Life lessons,
yeah, mostly it's
perspective.
stuff I've learned and stuff I've learned the hard way, and best practices. It's almost like a curriculum for living, and I'm sharing the stuff I'm trying to learn, right? That, and a lot of, I mean, I listen to probably, I'd say, at least 50 to 100 audiobooks a year. I'm constantly, I can play an audiobook on that, 4 different devices in here. So I'm constantly feeding my brain. And you mentioned the monitors. See, to me, this goes back to Amarillo and that lightning storm, right? I'm drawing in all this information and I get to choose what it is. So I get to mold my brain, feed my brain with what's in alignment with me instead of what a network decides or anyone else, right?
Well, one thing that I've noticed here, you do like to live in an environment of creativity, that's for sure. Besides, I believe 9 monitors, there could be 10. I could be missing one
Well,
in
you
here.
haven't been in the other rooms yet.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking about with what I can see within 10 feet. There is a keyboard, there is a banjo, there is a lap steel guitar, there's a phonograph, there are bongos, there is a Fender Strat guitar, there's an ukulele,
There's a
there is,
finger
you got a
thing over
finger
there.
harp over there.
There's 2 different singing bowls.
Okay, so like the Tibetan bowls
Yeah,
for vibration and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. Okay. And could what could well be a musical fire extinguisher for all I know. But
That's actually out of Stanford and Sons Comedy Club in Kansas City.
okay, okay. So you got singing bowl there for vibration and things. So yeah, absolutely. This your entire workspace here just screams creativity.
Well, it's funny because when I actually worry about this being too cluttered, I have people come in or clients, and I'm always worried about what they're going to think, and they're always like, "Wow, I would wish my room looked like this." They love it, but I'm actually thinking they're going to judge me.
Well, see, this is one of the freedoms about being a single guy
Right.
is you don't have anybody dictating to you how your
Well,
space looks.
actually, Trish, working on Flow, she's already ordered me to get at least 1 monitor out of here. So the bedroom monitor's got to go.
Okay. All right. Well, we won't step on Trisha's toes. We'll just let her guide you as you guys see fit. But yeah, the entire space is just about creativity, and I think one of the great things about there are hermit people that create and they keep it to themselves. All their art is about them. They don't want anybody else to see their art. They don't want anybody else to see their stuff. They may write, they may do music, and they keep it under a bushel, so to speak. And you want to share yours, don't you?
I wouldn't even do it if I couldn't share it, I don't think. Well, I probably would, but that's part of the beauty of it. When I did the shows in the malls, we set up before these carts came out, that they wanted the artists to come, and so we did a circuit around here, and we'd go do a show starting on Wednesday through Sunday, and just do a tour around the whole Northwest, right? And so I would have the experience of being sitting behind a wall where people are walking by and having a conversation about my art on the other side. So I've gotten to hear these conversations where they didn't know I was listening, and like,
That could be eye-opening.
how do you do that, and where's that, and all this. The awe that's coming out during the viewing is enlivening, and some of these places, I mean, think about it. And I didn't know this at the time, but one of my idols or influences was Ansel Adams.
Mm.
And he spent a lot of time going around the Southwest and making pictures with an 8x10 camera. He had a big rack on top of his old station wagon. He'd get up on there and stand on it. And I admired him for that. And then I found out that the government gave him a stipend for 10 years to do that. They paid him just to do that, right? And that was eye-opening because I've been doing it with no stipend, right? So that kind of even lifted up my idea of what I've been doing, because there's some people that haven't got to go to any national parks, right? Or see any Capitol buildings, right? Let alone everyone that, and I wouldn't, if I didn't have that camera in my hand, then the drive to do that, I mean, I didn't think I could do it. That seemed like a big ask when I first conceived it. And then the next thing you know, it's done. I mean, it's not done, but that the major cities are all completed, right? And some of them multiple times. And it speaks to what the limitations that we think are on us that may not be there, right? And that's what the writing is about. Hoping I can inspire, I don't know how many people have said, hey, I'm going to go there now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they just didn't know. And there's a lot of hidden gems that you got to travel to see it. And travel, that's next on my list, is now jumping off of the North American continent.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
You're going to walk out to the edge of the flat earth and jump off? Is that it? Or
I'm going to start with Baja in Mexico, go down to Cabo, and then, who knows, Paris. There's a lot of people I see traveling internationally all the time. I haven't done it yet. I've been dedicated to documenting, been to Alaska 4 times, been to Hawaii, but I've really just been on this continent, been to Mexico, never been off the North American continent. And that's got to change soon because I'm running out of stuff to photograph. Unless I go back to shooting models, which is fine. But I want to see the world, man. I want to leave behind something that lives beyond me, that can be given to a museum or a school or a library, right? So people can see what I've seen.
There's a tremendous amount of value in that. And in that way, you can immortalize your steps.
Yeah, I've heard it said that that's what we should do. Try to create something that lives beyond us, right? That's not just about us.
Great aspiration. Great aspiration. Well, one thing's for sure, there is a lot of the world left out there that you have not yet captured with your photography.
Well, and the next thing's going to be, I realized I could have been doing a lot of writing guidebook type thing, or writing about the places, which may be coming.
Collections and coffee table books and...
Well, yeah, but I mean, pieces about the Pacific or specific places, stories about the capitals or whatever, and doing more, like a Ken Burns type of investigative thing.
Mm-hmm.
He is just an amazing storyteller. When I see his stuff, I'm just like, oh my, that I eat that stuff up.
Somebody inspiring you.
That's right.
As you're trying to inspire others.
And he's got a whole team doing it with him,
Oh, so can we coin a new phrase, the circle of inspiration?
Ooh, I like it. The circle of inspiration. Here we are. The
That's
circle
it.
Of inspiration.
Right there.
Conversations worth having.
That's it. You heard it for the first time right here on Real Window Creatives podcast. That one's mine, by the way.
You just gave it away. Circle, I'll forget it as soon as you go.
Circles of inspiration.
Circles of inspiration. I like it.
That's it. Yeah, that could flesh that out a little bit.
You
that
like
might
that.
Be worth
you turned kind of red when you said that.
That might be just worth a paper. That might be worth an article on Medium.
You know it's going to show up.
I think it probably will, knowing you.
I actually worry about that because I hear something and then I go to write about it and I think, is that, are they going to be offended? Or it's like, what? Why aren't they taking action, right? If they're, we pick up our inspirations from everywhere. Mm-hmm. Everything inspires us. I'm constantly writing down. I'll show you. I have an idea folder. I have an idea, bunch of idea tablets, and I have a pen at all times. You know that about me. And so the idea hits me, I stop and I write it down, and it's either an article or the composition for an image. And it's hitting me all the time, right now it's happening. And it's funny because what do you think I shot last night? Microphones and headphones and sound gear, right?
So those images you were showing me of sound gear, you did that work last night.
Yeah, because that's how this life is so beautiful. You don't know each thing you try takes on its own life, and it takes you with it, right? We think we're driving, but the universe is now showing us what it wanted us to see, and it's like a tree. New branches come off of that we're going to be interested in that we didn't really even know. I never even thought of taking pictures of a microphone before now. Go figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden I'm looking at a microphone, and so it's like, I like the way those look.
Absolutely. I have microphone art in my recording studio.
Well, you're going to probably get another one.
I'm down. I'm down. Especially if it comes from you, buddy.
Absolutely, man.
Well, folks, this has been somewhat of a Windows view into Real Window Creative. Sorry to be corny about that. I just couldn't resist. But give you a little bit of idea what Real Window Creative is all about, what Christopher Boswell is all about. But I'll just close with this statement. Just don't think that this is all Christopher Boswell's about, because Chris, like so many of us, is evolving.
Yeah, new things are going to come up all the time. It's important just to keep in action, I feel. If I can go to a place for something, get disappointed, and I'll just clam up, right? And not create because, something somebody says or some judgment. I mean, right now the political climate is just a perfect example of that. And it's, I find it painful and unfortunate. And my art saves me from that, right? In one of the articles, if the viewers go, they may find an article about Donald Trump and the situation with a piece of art that I had on my wall when I was 9 of Nixon with all the players of Watergate, right? This black light poster. I didn't even know why I liked it. And I still don't. But there was just something about it that drew me in. I had to have it, right? And looking back now, I see my young brain was already looking at the whys and whats of the, political and people and how they all work together. And that's probably not where you expected that to go. But yeah, let's sign this thing off. Thanks for coming over. We're going to be this is kind of like the inaugural. I'm going to be doing a couple podcasts a week with movers and shakers in the neighborhood here. We're going to do them by phone. We're going to talk to everybody who's willing to talk. I actually have a guy coming with a parrot. We're going to talk to the parrot and see if we can get it to talk. And then we're going to share all this stuff because I'm going to change it to circles of influence. What was it again?
That's exactly what it is. Circles of influence.
Well, that's not what you said, though. You said circles of inspiration.
Oh, yeah.
Right. See, you're
influence. See, in something.
Circles.
I figured I'd listen to the recording and jot down notes later.
But it's really about conversations worth having. I get in deep conversations with my friends, and it used to be something that people would tell me they weren't interested in. You talk too much, you think too much. And that's what would send me into the hole, right? Like I'm not right for the world. But now I'm finding that I'm maybe right for 50%, and that's okay with me.
It's never fun to swim in the wading pool, my friend.
That's right. Perfect. Thanks for coming over, Lyle, man.
My pleasure. It's been good to have this podcast with you, and looking forward to maybe doing some more. We'll see how that works out.
So you guys out there, what would really help if you find value in this, come over to realwindowcreative.com, jump off there and go to Patreon. I'm putting a ton of material on Patreon that's exclusive, that is stories, different narrators. You can actually right now on Patreon get a free print by signing up for the $10 level. You get a $50 print of you get to pick the city. So you could say, I want one of Kansas City, right? And I'll send you a frame, double matted, not in a frame, but ready to frame, photographic print, signed, limited edition. And then you can get content it's the cost of a latte, right? There's a $5 level, which is less than a cost of a latte, to give you content, photographic content, audio content, all month long. And we hope to see you there.
Sounds like a tremendous deal.
Yes, I think yes. But then I'm biased, right?
Yeah, of course. We're good.